So every now and then I like to explore the virus trap cards to see whether or not they have potential in the current format or not. And of course this one is no exception because I think they might be worth the shot. In this video I won't really go over the entire effect of all the 4 trap cards that I will be covering because I'm just going to assume that you already know them. And obviously I'm not gonna go over grinding gray virus because it's dog shit. Alright, let's start off with the most popular, which is Eradicator Epidemic Virus. Whether you're making your opponent lose spells or trap cards, Eradicator is always gonna be a really good card. There aren't that many trap decks this format, but if you can use this card against Labyrinth, Eldritch, or Dinomorphia, it's gonna have a huge impact. And there is obviously no such thing as a deck that doesn't play spell cards. If you can resolve this card against Sky Striker, or Runic, or Kashtira, or even Despia, this card is always great. On average, this card should make your opponent lose anywhere between 2 to 4 cards from your opponent's hand. That's just to show you how prominent spell cards are in Yu-Gi-Oh! However, calling spells against a deck that has a lot of quick play spell cards might not always be optimal, so you might not want to shotgun this card on standby or draw phase every single time. Sometimes holding Eradicator might be the key, so you might want to let your opponent commit to a few actions and then use Eradicator. And the beauty about Eradicator is that it also covers all your opponent's back rows and all cards they draw for the next 3 turns. And when I say draw, I mean every kind of draw, so not just the draw phase. Also, if you happen to play Labyrinth, which by the way is the best deck that can utilize Eradicator Virus this format, you can easily turbo this card out with Lady Labyrinth or maybe Lord of the Heavenly Prison and then use it right away with Kuklok. So let's just say you have your Welcome Labyrinths and everything, but you don't have Eradicator already and your opponent goes into battle phase, you can go Welcome Labyrinth into Lady Labyrinth and then use something else and then, I don't know, trigger the effect of Kuklok and then use the Eradicator right away so that you can call traps and your opponent's evenly does nothing. Anyways, next virus is Deck Devastation Virus. It's slightly easier to trigger than Eradicator because it's only a dark monster with 2000 or more attack. And this matters a lot because it means that it can be summoned generically with Codebreaker Virus Swordsman, which is just a link 2 that requires 2 effect monsters. And by the way, if you can resolve Deck Devastation Virus against Super Heavy Samurai, not that the deck is popular or anything, but if you do, you win the game on the spot because they lose all their monsters. They play no spells and traps, and all their hand traps, all their Super Heavy Samurai monsters will always lose out to this card. Absolutely cracked. Oh, and speaking of which, every single Mathemic monster in existence also loses to Deck Dev. And because of, again, the fact that you're clearing your opponent's hand traps, you can actually protect yourself from Ash and Bell if you're a Labyrinth player. Anyways, how about Full Force Virus? The card is really simple. It has the exact same card text as Deck Devastation Virus, except that you replace the word attack with defense. This means it doesn't cover hand traps because hand traps usually have 1800 defense except for Veiler and Droll, and it also isn't really that great against Super Heavy Samurai because the wagon will survive, and finally it does less than nothing against Kashtira. I will say though, it's not too bad against Vanquished Soul. There are only 2 survivors when you resolve this card, and these survivors are Mad Love as well as Panthera. But then again, your opponent will keep all their spell cards, so, you know, Reinforcement of the Army, Stake Your Soul, Prosperity, etc., so I don't know if that's really optimal. And that deck is also notorious for playing Fenrir, which has a really thick booty, so I don't really know if you should actually commit into that. But yeah, Crush Card Virus is actually quite similar in a way. Actually, in terms of effects, it's not really similar, but in terms of impact against Vanquished Soul, it's pretty much the same thing. Crush Card Virus resolving against Vanquished Soul will make them lose 4 out of 6 Vanquished Soul monsters. This time, these survivors will be Mad Love and Pluton HG, but that card sucks ass anyways. But again, just like Full Force Virus, there is a huge drawback to using Crush Card Virus. Because of the fact that you're also letting your opponent destroy cards from their deck, this means that they can just like go normal summon Mad Love, Surge to continue, revive back the Ryzen, and then you're screwed. So ironically, Crush Card might actually help your opponent out if you end up ripping like 4 cards and then they randomly have access to Ryzen now. Yeah, clearly not what you're trying to achieve, that's for sure. With that being said, resolving Crush Card against Kashtira is basically game. Crush Card is pretty much the opposite of Deck Devastation Virus, so if Deck Dev destroys weak monsters, Crush Cards destroys big monsters. And there will be pretty much only 1 survivor from the Kashtira archetype, and that would be the Scareclaw Kashtira. Everything else dies, and that's really good for you. So what I recommend is, again, you don't shotgun on draw phase or standby, you let them perform a few actions, and then you nuke them completely, and then they cry. But again, what is really cool about the Virus Trap cards is that you don't really have to play like 3 of each if you are playing Labyrinth, for example, because 1 of each will suffice because you can easily surge them. But even outside of Labyrinth, there can still be a world in which you might want to play these cards generically. Remember that any 2 effect monsters can turn into Codebreaker Virus Swordsman, and then that will turn on the Deck Devastation Virus. And Codebreaker Virus Swordsman is also a card that you might potentially already want to play in like Purely or Sprite, for example, because it is an auto Baguska. And by the way, speaking of Sprite, Deck Devastation Virus is also really good against Sprite. Again, all their monsters are weak. And if you have access to any bestial monster, you are turning on 3 of the 4 virus trap cards, the only exception being Crush Card, of course. But you know, can we really complain about that? Any deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Can turn on Crush Card. If you've got a level 1 monster, you can turn it into Linkuriboh, and then you're fine. And if you got a level 4 or lower Cybers monster, you can turn it into Linkuriboh. So let's just say you are a Mathmech player and you keep losing to Kashtira. One really good way of fixing that would be by playing Crush Card Virus in your side deck now. But yeah, again, it's not just the trap heavy decks and the dark based strategies that can abuse these virus trap cards. Anyways, that's all I had to say for this video. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts about the virus trap cards in the comment section below. I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.